bizarre that so many people got duped. And I felt the same way about Bernie Madoff. You know, I'm not a financially aware person. I'm not into the market. I don't follow these things.
That's the issue. Was FTX's problem was not CZ. Ultimately, he's kind of the guy who like pushed over the house made A1Z, A16Z. It was one of those, Sequoia or A16Z. One of them wrote this glowing review of Sam, basically saying he's going to be one of the first trillionaires. So all the victims would reach out to me. They'd be like, hey, I'd been scammed by this guy, and I didn't realize what was going on. And you showed me, sort of like how the whole scheme worked. It wasn't like he was some random fly-by-night guy. He was well respected in the Wall Street space. People thought he might take over the SEC after like the current person had stepped down. They thought he was going to take it over, like a person in the space, to where people thought, okay, well, if he's saying it, he's a guy who only says positive things about crypto because he's a crypto executive. So if he's saying there might be problems, there's probably some problems. But on sticks or something. Like it was never – the problem was the foundation was wrong from the beginning. If you don't have enough deposits to cover withdrawals, you just don't have the money, right? You're
on and a lot of ums and ahs, and you just kept on him. It was amazing that he – first of all, it was amazing that – he felt like he could do,
and basically like, shell games where you're hiding the money. Yeah. You're saying, oh, invest in this. This is going to become valuable later, but you actually own a bunch. But like, it was very clear the internal conversations were they knew they were committing fraud. They knew they were doing things wrong. And this idea was, well, no one's going to catch us, right? Nobody's, there were things that were coming out like questions about, okay, they say they have all this money. Where on chain is it? So like the blockchain, everything's publicly, you can see it. Or, something like Europe or something like that is you are subject to all these regulations which require you to be a little more careful.
Oh, those are pesky.
Yeah, they're
inevitable.
It's inevitable. So something to understand. FTX was insolvent long before it was realized that they were insolvent. Right? So he's a shark. He knows what he's doing.
What was the conflict between the two of them that led him to do that?
The conflict was – it's a great question. The conflict was ultimately that Sam was trying to get some regulations passed, and he God mode on Ultimate Bet where the CEO could see everybody's hands and play on the site, seeing everybody's hands. So there was a lot of fear of missing out, or FOMO, in the markets at the time. Everyone thought, oh, cryptos – you have to get in now, right? Because if you get in now, I start hearing about these tokens. And they're like, hey, selling courses, like it's always the new grift. You always have to find, because people figure it out. Like they go like, oh, that actually doesn't work. Like, hey, drop shipping is no success. 2 months, you're going to be making 5 figures a month. 10 months, maybe 6 figures a month. And I've done it for people before. That's the social proof. I've shown people how to do this money system. Especially in our modern age, it seems like you can understand where they're coming from, the average person, everybody. I ask him, and he doesn't want to talk to me. But he's going on these Twitter spaces. So I was tracking when he'd go on a Twitter space, and I would contact the people ahead of time and said, hey, crypto keys all the time. It's kind of an interesting idea where you go, I'm going to get in before everyone else. But a lot they kind of shut down. Myself and some other people were saying, like, we think they're insolvent because we had taken a look at their numbers and we said, there's no way they have the money for this. They don't have the token. Touch your money, obviously. That was the whole point. It's like, you deposit with us, we're not going to do anything with your money. It's your money. It's like a deposit. Like it's almost like a bank. Like you deposit with a bank. Your bank isn't supposed to go ahead and take your money. That's right, but
also to the Republicans.
This is what's wild. So Sam knew publicly in our current American climate, like crypto is sometimes national currencies aren't a great idea and you want an alternative. So like look at the Turkish lira.
And in the FTX case, how much of it was getting celebrities to endorse the platform?
It's huge. This is what I wanted to say. Like the more I study, where's the money? I don't know. But he controls everything. And so it's like this is the tactic of these offshore companies is like you put the
down because it seems like they received additional scrutiny, right? Because now people are starting to look at it, and I saw that their value went down considerably.
Yeah, what I know is everyone's always interested in pulling up the ladder after them and like building the kind of the rule book around like, hey, like if you're from this certain jurisdiction that we're a part of, you're fine. If you're not, like in the terms of service, they said results may vary. What's that about? I mean, ultimately, it's like, and so I realized like, oh, there's this sophisticated way that they're preying on my psychology, and might be one of the first like trillionaires or whatever. Like he's such a great entrepreneur. They think he's such a genius. It might have been one of the A1Z guys or
whiz kid, who you listen to him talk. He has an answer for everything. He's so articulate. He's so knowledgeable. Like I listened to previous interviews before he got busted.
Tease for a while, but like so I eventually like pivoted into this crypto direction and learned all about that. But it started just from a curiosity about scammers, and I wanted somebody to say, found out how to be successful. And if you invest with me, I'll save you time. You know, you could do it yourself, Joe. You could do it, but it's going to take you 5 years. Get with me, and I'm going to shortcut your success.
Why the celebrities are important, and that's why
it's a huge part of it.
The connection to BlackRock is important.
Huge part, yes, because they're the legitimacy that says, hey, there was already all this worry in the past. That summer, there had been a bunch of companies that collapsed, and people had never thought FTX. It was kind of the first time anyone thought FTX could maybe not have the money left. And ultimately, because they had lost billions of dollars, it left billions of dollars in credit claims, basically. They didn't have the money.
I really enjoyed you catching him on Twitter Spaces. I really enjoyed that. I listened to the whole thing because before that, you have this guy who's this,
not actually like this incredible business that you thought it was, that you're going to get rich easily. So don't do that. Go do crypto. You got to get into crypto now. And then it became, and if I put like let's say I have Ethereum, one Ether into this mixer, right? This pool of money. A bunch of people are putting one Ethereum into. He's like, well, like think of it like a box. And, you tell a bunch of investors, hey, if you put money in this box, we can get some money out. We locate it out in the Bahamas, which is a great place to put your...
Why do they do it in the Bahamas?
Because it's unregulated. So the problem with doing stuff in the United States, and like one of the first things the guy does is he controls it, but he renounces ownership. He goes, oh, I'm passing it off to some sham director. And he goes, I don't have anything to do. I don't know. He's one of the leaders at the NASDAQ. I mean, he was one of the go-to guys. And so you thought, well, I invest with Bernie, like I can't lose. It's like almost, betting on the house. But even Western Union has been they've been getting kind of pinched a little bit. Like, hey, you guys got to stop allowing all of this. But in crypto, because there's no, or with just put a bunch of garlic cloves in the pot. I still remember our house like reeked. She would put 60 cloves of garlic in a stew. Balances. But oops, did I tell you about this $10 billion account? Like I forgot. It's so silly. It's you literally had a $10 billion account that he mislabeled with Alameda Research.
Mislabeled.
Yeah,
so when I see something like that go down, I'm like, how did he get Steven Spielberg? How does someone like a Bernie Madoff or Sam Bankman-Fried, how does he get these people to do this?
I'm this guy who's going to maximize good in the world, and that was his reason for working all the time. I mean, that's the justification to be hopped up on amphetamines. It's like maximize productivity, maximize human happiness. That means playing League of Legends while on investment calls. Like at the time, that was seen as this charming, genius thing.
On calls.
You could hear even actually calling that a fraud early. I have a buddy of mine. He goes by Dirty Bubble Media on Twitter. He's like one of the Anon Twitter accounts. He was calling it a fraud. Shocking thing. And I think that shows like if you're running a shady empire, like who's better than a shady lawyer to try to help you cover it up, right?
How did you get in?
Guy who enabled God or who helped cover up God mode. And he's like, well, I don't want to comment on other, people, or it's just like.
Well, how does he skate on that? Like, how?
You're the CEO as of 2020. He hands it to this, a girl he actually had a relationship with, Caroline Ellison, right? And she supposedly controlled it. He said she did. A lot of people found out about crypto the same time the mainstream media, everyone else did. So by the time they're actually investing,
It's too late.
It's too late. I think the most fair case you could make about ultimately going to find out what we're doing here.
How many more of these are out there in the world?
As big as FTX, and then you'll launch your own token that people can invest in, sort of like they're investing almost in your crypto exchange. And so that was actually one of the ways that FTX deal. But I'm from the Bahamas and I'm American, so that might be fine. I mean, everyone's always interested in the regulations benefiting them. The challenge now, though, is a lot of people had some reactions, but not much. What I noticed is it resonated with people beyond the views, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was just like, there was something different about the reaction to it. Like, and Vic Dark, where it's like you can donate through super PACs, political action committees, and you can donate as much as you want, and you don't have to be, your name has to appear nowhere. And so that's actually
people that were standing out and saying none of this makes sense.
Right.
And who were those people?
So there were a few people. There was, hey, just make this problem go away. This is the CEO. Like, go blame it on somebody else. Go blame it on some third party that got access to our website. Say it was like a glitch or something. And so that like what exactly what are the regulations in terms of like what you're allowed to do and donate, and how did he violate them? So I think the big violation was you're not supposed to, and it's like sort of what's left after the guy who kind of was spearheading this bill was a fraud. It's kind of tough. I was actually randomly some very strange, and these offshore entities were also using U.S. branches. Like there's FTX U.S., which was more regulated, but not really that regulated. It's to their other friends. They're all saying it's okay. Let me put money in. And it's just a huge case study that just because other people, I used to be just like you, Joe, but then, I found out that doing Amazon drop shipping is the way to make millions of dollars. And, I used to fail, but by these little tricks, I want to store your money somewhere else. How do you store it? So there's this idea of these alternative currencies that are kind of interesting. And then there's some arguments that hey, if you're someone like me, sort of this is a fraud because, no one knew. There's a bunch of backing. So I made a video at the time being like, this crypto CEO just describes a Ponzi scheme.
Regulated? If he was doing this, Coinbase can't do this. Is that correct?
Yeah, Coinbase is much more heavily scrutinized. They actually have to file with the SEC. You can't do that and then say, oops, I played a little too much of my video games and lost billions of dollars. This doesn't fly.
Well, he wasn't saying that I played the video games and that's why I lost the money.
But LGBTQ plus causes. And it was through a guy, and the guy was like, I feel a little uncomfortable with this. And they said, well, we don't have anyone trustworthy at FTX we can donate through. So they were paying everybody to promote this FTX crypto exchange. And the idea is this is the next big thing, right? And this is where you're going to make money.
The fact that they were all living together and fucking each other in this giant penthouse, this $40 billion penthouse, the things, it's insane. It's really... I almost wish...
said, well, hey, can we restructure all this money that went through me like a loan so that we can, say that I took a loan out and I was donating so we didn't violate any laws. They never ended up doing that and give you this yield. He starts explaining this thing that sounds exactly like a Ponzi scheme. And so ultimately, Matt Levine's like, yeah, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. But again, it stops short. Is the experience of the lawyer that FTX then hires is being complicit on a leaked private call, trying to cover up this God mode scam. And that's ultimately what he was doing. But it also looks like he was donating through some of his executives. And I mean, the whole thing was shady all the way down. Right people in charge who are going to take the fall, you resign, and then you blame it on them later when everything goes wrong. His problem, though, is Caroline Ellison flipped on him.
So she definitely flipped on him.
She was smart. Yeah. She cooperated. Your issue is that anytime there's demand for withdrawals, you're going to encounter problems. So it was going to be inevitable anytime any store outright the proceeds of criminals. I mean, we know that these criminals do launder their money through a lot of these crypto exchanges, through mixers. It's just sort of a Matt Levine interview with Sam Bankman-Fried. He didn't call him a fraud outright, but he's like, hey, it seems like you're in the Ponzi business and business is good.
Whoa. And what did he say to that?
Reasons that our banks have a bunch of anti-money laundering laws. There's a reason that they have all sorts of finance laws. It's not for their safety. It's for your safety. I mean, it's like they need to, and that video has aged so well because it's like people are like, oh, it was all true. But people were outright calling it a fraud. Like Mark Cohodes, he's a famous short seller. He was really perpetuated their fraud. I can break it down. How much do you know about the FTX?
Let's
situation?
break it down for people that don't know about it. So
let's do it. So FTX was this crypto exchange, and it's like, well, what's fungibility mean? It means whether you were a guy withdrawing who is this degenerate day trader, then he comes up, prep school. He's kind of like built for success, right? He goes to MIT, goes to Jane Street as this quantitative trader of what's going on. Now he's still like trying to say he did nothing wrong. He maintains he's innocent. And right now, actually, the big like kind of scam.
Do something like that. Like, why would he publicly communicate?
This is why it's so interesting to me to look at fraud. Like, this is why it fascinates me, as well as I think it's an important thing. And I'd go because it was like my friends like said, "Hey, we have to get somebody. You know, you want to go?" And I was like, "Sure, I'll go." I was like kind of fascinated, and you'd see these guys, and it just was kind of. I was just trying to find my way. I was just trying to like, even before that, I had done a show where I was like trying to break down these topics. I was like,
and then when you have them on, there's a lot of I wasn't aware. I'm not sure. I'm not aware of that. I don't know. There was all this hemming and
caught. In my view, what he did was criminal. That's why I started. But it hasn't been prosecuted or anything like that. But he's on a leaked private call. Everyone can go listen to it yourself. It's just this. Now I can just send you $100K. It's going to take me 5 minutes.
So that's why when people like kidnap people's data and things along those lines, they'd like to get paid.
Now if you're some criminal, laundering money has just never been easier. Instead of taking $100,000 across the border or wiring it where it can get held up by a bank, now you're going to make some money. And so people invested in FTX thinking that this is going to be a safe platform. This kid is smarter than everyone else. He's Washington. And I think there was like a tweet from Sam saying like, oh, like I'll see you the next time you're in Washington or something like that. But like it was kind of a dig because he knows CZ can't go to Washington. Like he would be
each other on amphetamines and making billions of dollars. Like it sounds like a great story if it wasn't illegitimate.
Yeah, ultimately that's the problem. Like Sam was just hopped up on amphetamine.
One guy who lost a hard drive and who's paying people to go through a landfill to try to find his hard drive because there's billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin on that hard drive.
Yeah, people lose their.
It wasn't a scam. I've said this before because I root for nerds to like be that successful that you're just completely living outside the norms of society, just fucking.
I have 2 employees, and both of them are overseas. Like one of them's in London, one of them's in Ukraine. And so for me, I have to pay them, and I have to do that. You put $100,000 into this little mixer, and then it sends $100,000 out later, and nobody knows where that money came from.
What is a mixer? How does it work?
It's interesting. So the most famous example is Tornado Cash. I didn't really know what I was looking at the time. Then I go to college, and all my friends get an MLMs, multi-level marketing. Sort of like just like hey, you're gonna get rich. So I was always getting invited to these like get rich seminars. This stuff went down. And a report comes out from CoinDesk where it shows FTX's balance sheet. It shows actually what tokens they have. For one of the first times, it was kind of, I start covering it, and then I start to get cease and desist letters. They don't like that. So they start to send me, they say, hey, you better shut up or we're going to sue you. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to stop making these videos. Right? It's all at some address. And so people were asking, like, you say you have all this Bitcoin, where's the Bitcoin? You say you have all this Ethereum, where's the Ethereum? Sam goes, oh, you won like our battle. And people were like, is it a battle when you lose billions of dollars of customers?
It was like 70,000 or something like
60 plus, yeah.
So that's the lure. The lure is you buy in for pennies, and one day you're insanely rich. I'm sure you know about that.
He lost it on the platform. He says the 18 million was on FTX or whatever, and he never got $1 out of it. but that was what the deal was for. I mean, so it's like things are good for now. Yeah.
You don't know.
That was the problem with the FTX. Like, they had hidden all their numbers. Like, Sam had gay, so like, can you do this?
So someone had to be gay to do it? Like,
no. Basically, they were like, we need someone trustworthy we can trust to do this. So hey, you're going to be the guy. Like, wait. So this is funny. They found his League of Legends account, and during some of the calls after it was a fraud, you could hear him clicking in the background. Click, 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 click. He's playing League, and from the arms of one huckster to another. Like, it's just like it's almost to something worse. So I decided to start pursuing it step by step, and at first it was like just me discovering, like, well, what is this? Well, how does this scheme work? Okay, so I buy this course, and then what? Regulation for, I guess, offshore crypto exchanges, right?
And so these campaign finance, these violations, don't really understand what's going. Like the FTX thing, for example, is the best one, because I was so in the dark about this thing. I was like, what is happening? Like, what are they doing? Try to break it down for us. Like, first of all,
with regulators, they were all trying to. Sam was working really closely with regulators to try to get regulations passed, and CZ felt like he was cut out. So that stirred up this like battle between them, and ultimately, that these basically nerds in cryptography thought of, which is it's brilliant. I mean, it is brilliant because it is basically it's almost impossible to trace
through crypto
ransomware. Yes, yes, 100%. Because before it was like, okay, you need to use like Western Union or sort of one of these places where you can kind of send money without too much scrutiny. Broke that showed that maybe they're not as healthy as they should be. There would have been a run on the banks and people would have found out. It's just like, when are they going to find out? It just, he happened to be the final straw, if that makes sense.
So someone would have figured out, how does a guy like that not wind up getting indicted?
I ask myself that every day. There's so many.
Is it a matter of time, or is it
tokens like is the individual. You can think of currency, right? So it's like the individual. So Bitcoin is, you have Bitcoin. Then you have, it's one of the cryptocurrencies. You have Ethereum.
Views about what? Like you didn't start doing this. You started doing just like a normal interview show?
I was just doing a normal interview show with a few of my buddies, and ultimately one of the ways, like even some of the candidates they donated to were through like a third employee we didn't even know about, and they were like donating through them for like all these Coinbase or something like that.
Right.
So FTX launches. Let's start with who Sam Bankman-Fried is. He's kind of at the center of all of this. Sam Bankman-Fried is this guy who he's the son of two Harvard lawyers. Friedberg, shady. This guy
allegedly shady.
Dan Friedberg. No, he's definitely shady. I'll say that.
What was his? I remember, but what was his?
The son of Harvard lawyers. We just sort of can't lose. And nobody paid attention to some of the red flags that were going on until ultimately it was too late. It turns out he was pillaged. They've recently been shut down. But the idea was...
just the idea of putting your money into tornado cash.
Yeah, it's wild.
Is there a better...
So before, it's like if I send you $1 and then you send that dollar on, we can easily trace that back to me, right? It's like here. But if I send $1 to you and everyone's sending you $1, and then you're sending $1 to all this stuff, and you start to have repeat occurrences, like I just cover stuff all the time, and you see echoes of the same thing. I just had somebody just a couple of days ago I was interviewing for this news scheme we're looking at, and he said, FTX said in their terms of service. So one of the really big problems was they actually weren't doing that, but nobody knew because nobody had to look at their books. Like it was very opaque. Sam wanted to basically influence politics by just donating. And the idea is you donate to both sides, you can never lose, right?
Yeah.
If you're really going to sell most of our FTT that we got from that deal, and we're going to sell it. We don't know what's going on there. And all of a sudden it starts this firestorm because people
figured it out and someone would have started dumping their coin.
Yeah, people already, even leading up, like CZ gets a lot of the credit for it, but like already, like a day before, kept making the videos, and ultimately they never did. But I start doing that, and after I cover get rich quick schemes for a while, fine. And then FTX US went bankrupt, and he's the one who put it into bankruptcy. And then he's telling everyone, oh, no, the money's actually still there. I mean, he was constantly giving a conflicting narrative. These guys basically, a lot of these people backed Sam with the highest endorsements. And so if you're just an average person, you're thinking, well, how much more due diligence can I do than all these other guys? He blamed all the wrongdoing of FTX on Alameda Research. And he said, I don't control Alameda Research. Even though he was the owner, he's no longer not having sort of like, it's maybe not big enough. You know, they're good people, a lot of the people going after these guys, but it's like trying to catch everyone who's speeding. Will fall for something doesn't mean you're safe. Like, you have to do, I hate to say do your own research because that's such an overused, like, scammy phrase. It's actually such like a phrase like that, you know, it's almost usable, the account, fiat at FTX. And so what prosecutors are now arguing is he knew, of course, what it was. He deliberately obscured.
What was the first video?
I started as sort of like an interview show, nothing about scams. I had a channel before it. What they wanted to store some Bitcoin with Tom Brady. They wanted to be alongside Tom Brady. So he's like, well, you know, there was fungibility between wallets. Is he on Twitter? I probably butchered his name, but he was actually originally sort of an ally of Sam. So he invested in FTX early on, put $100 million in. And you do not get to that level and not know that things were wrong.
Well, reading her tweets about amphetamine use was pretty wild, too. The whole scene was wild.
If you're from this one, you're not okay. Or I might say, hey, like, CZ has connections to China. Like, maybe that's a problem. Or CZ has connections to here. Maybe that's a big deal. Don't invest. Like, that's a bad idea.
People were calling bullshit, though. Just like they were calling, there was a few people that were wary that were calling bullshit on Bernie Madoff, and there was a few.
You can take that money and you can send it to what's called a mixer, which is this like fancy language for a way to like anonymize your transaction. Like, you put it annoying. So like
that.
The famous example is like Coinbase is in America and they have to file all these forms. They're a regulated entity. They're publicly traded. I'm a millionaire by the time I'm 23 years old. Just buy my course. My course is, $2,000. Pay me $2,000. I'll teach you to get rich quick.
So, or is it just pure addiction? I think, those multiplayer games, those, online role-playing games, that's what that is, right? It's like
I think is it a MOBA? I went to school for chemical engineering and hated it. I was miserable. I was like, I do not want my life to be earning 2% more of a bottom line for ExxonMobil or any was going to undo sort of everything. Like, if you don't root out the scams, you don't find ways to solve that, this is never going to work, because if you're all these other wallets, that it's impossible to know which of those new wallets my dollar's from. It's like, it's just crazy. It's a crazy idea, right? The inflation rate, I think, is like 75% or something like that. It's an unimaginable, it's just out of control inflation. And if you hold on to your Turkish lira, you're in for a bad time.
Involved in what you do.
It's a weird thing.
So when did you start your YouTube channel?
So I started it a few years ago, 2018, 2019. Her and I believe Gary Wang were big executives. They're cooperating. They pled guilty. They're cooperating with the feds. I mean, they did this. Is not surgery. You can just treat it naturally. Just don't worry about, hey, don't listen to the doctors. Don't listen to your general practitioner. You can just treat it with like colloidal silver.
Initially, he thought he was going to be able to figure out a way to pull all the company's assets together and
I think
make everybody sound and repay everyone.
Fight, like, one of the best ways to fight crime is at their wallets, like take away their banking. And crypto has just really revitalized that because, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like people get away with it. It's just there's too many people doing it. And you'll catch some people, but ultimately a lot of people will just basically skate by, even though by all rights they should have been to expose. But like, I'm interested in the characters who perpetuate fraud because they're such interesting psychological case studies. Sam Bankman-Fried, you could probably write a whole book about. I'm blanking on the name right now. But
A1Z? What is that?
No. I'm sorry. I'm blanking on. It's this famous. I'm going to remember it right after I get out of here. It's one of the famous assets. You can check yourself. Like, I have $1 billion in USDC. Well, that's great. But it doesn't matter if I have $1 billion in crypto, Bitcoin, whatever, if I owe $2 billion.
Right.
Or you were a grandma who just put one Bitcoin on there, or, more likely the grandson, he treated all the accounts the same. So when everyone came running for the money, they just withdrew until nothing was. So he decides to donate dark to a Republican, to Republicans. And part of the accusation is he knowingly did this through one of his, everyone loses confidence. Everyone sells their FTT tokens. No one wants to buy it. It's worth nothing.
So how did this all fall apart?
Great question. And she would drink it up because she thought that would make her better. Ultimately, my dad